We had been advancing for days, pushing further into enemy territory, but the progress was slow and exhausting. Our boots sank into the muddy ground with every step, and the cold was beginning to bite at our fingers and toes. The terrain was unlike anything we had encountered before, endless forests and treacherous marshes that made movement difficult and exhausting. It felt as if the land itself was conspiring against us, resisting our presence. We had expected resistance, but the Soviet forces we encountered were more determined and resourceful than we had anticipated. Their knowledge of the terrain gave them an advantage, and they used it to launch ambushes and hit and run attacks that took a toll on our morale. Every day brought new challenges, and the constant threat of attack weighed heavily on our minds. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and orange, we found ourselves entrenched in a fierce battle. The Soviets had launched a surprise attack, and we were caught off guard. The air was filled with the deafening roar of gunfire and the screams of the wounded. We fought back with everything we had, but it felt like an endless struggle. The enemy was relentless, and their determination was terrifying. In the chaos of battle, I remember seeing one of our men fall beside me, a bullet catching him in the chest. He gasped for breath, his eyes wide with fear, and I was powerless to help him. The ground beneath us was stained with blood, and the sounds of war were all around us. We were fighting not just for survival, but for a sense of purpose in a place that seemed determined to swallow us whole. As the battle raged on, the night closed in, cold and unforgiving. The temperature dropped sharply, and the cold seeped into our bones. We were exhausted, our bodies aching from the relentless combat, but there was no rest to be found. The Soviets continued to press their attack, and we were forced to dig in and hold our ground. The forest, once a place of eerie quiet, had become a battleground echoing with the sounds of war. Eventually, the enemy retreated, and we were left to assess the damage. The losses were heavy, and the cost of the day's fighting weighed heavily on all of us. We buried our dead in the cold, hard ground, marking their graves with simple wooden crosses. There was no time to mourn, no time to reflect. We were soldiers, and the war continued. The days that followed were a blur of cold, hunger, and constant vigilance. The enemy was always close, and we were never truly safe. The weather grew harsher, the cold more biting, and the night seemed longer and more treacherous. We huddled together for warmth, our spirits worn down by the endless march of war. Latvia, with its dark forests and unforgiving terrain, became a place of nightmares for us. The land seemed determined to break us, and the Soviets, with their relentless attacks, seemed intent on driving us out. We fought on, driven by duty and the will to survive, but the war had changed us. The men who had marched into Latvia with hope and determination were now shadows of their former selves, worn down by the brutality of war and the relentless cold. In the end, we knew that this land would never truly belong to us. It resisted our presence at every turn, and the enemy fought with a ferocity that we could not match. As we continued our march through the frozen forests of Latvia, it became clear that we were not just fighting the Soviets, we were fighting the land itself, a battle we were destined to lose.